Hello and welcome to Abe's complete Star Trek commentary podcast, where today I'll be discussing Season 1, Episode 18 of the original series, The Squire of Gothos. First of all, I would like to apologise for my delayed absence on this one. I really should get to recording these more, but I do seem to do these in spurts. I really do kind of enjoy this episode for a number of reasons. Among other things, it's sort of a precursor to to one of the characters in Star Trek: The Next Generation, Q. In fact, there is a book entitled Q Squared, which does indicate that the main protagonist in this episode, by the name of Trelane, is actually a member of the Q Continuum. A really good book by Peter David, and for those of you who haven't read it, I suggest you do. It is also available on YouTube as a audio book, or you can buy it or something. Well worth the listen. Well worth the listen or the read. But as far as the episode is concerned, it does go to show what happens when one lives with absolute power for too long. To a point where one is considered to be better than others, and others are considered to be, for lack of a better word, bugs or toys to be played with, as opposed to, as opposed to actual people and entities. Something which, sadly, affects more people than we care to admit in this world. A lot of people consider themselves to be better than others, and don't consider, shall we say, the common man, and as a result, there is a lot of suffering, rather than if we all treated each other as equals and as people, and that there are certainly reasons that we should care about everyone. Anyway, so let's get started with the episode, The Squire of Gothos, and as per my previous ones, I will be kind of making comments as I get to various parts of the episode. So yeah, let's get started. So the episode begins with on the bridge, and they're just kind of making their way across a empty part of space on the way to deliver some supplies to a colony, and the initial kind of description is that of a space desert, and I love the little kind of banter that they have at the start of this episode, being that it's empty, dry. Kirk mentions that palm trees and different things, and Spock comes along saying that the actual definition is that of a waterless, empty wasteland. And I fail to see your romanticism for such a place, which is very true. But then again, there are people who do live in those kinds of areas. I mean, take Egypt and the Middle Eastern kind of part of the world. And there are parts of there, although I've not actually been there myself, I have seen photographs, which I like to think are real, of areas like that are actually quite beautiful. Because just because something is barren doesn't mean that there isn't a certain kind of beauty to it. Don't get me wrong, I would not want to live there myself. My skin does tend to get sunburned pretty easily, and I would be a full-time lobster. But I do see the beauty for those that do live there. So, as the Enterprise continues on its course, all of a sudden a planet appears in front of them, which no one had known about before. Kirk is on a supply run, and so does need to kind of get the supplies that he's going to the colony they're supposed to be going to. And all of a sudden, when he orders Sulu to try and move around this planet, Sulu disappears. Kirk runs over to where Sulu was at the helm. He disappears, and all of a sudden, and so everyone's like, "Huh? What the?" And there's radio communication is being cut off and whatnot. So the question now becomes, what has happened to the captain and helmsman? Let's find out what mysteries this mysterious planet holds. So we come back to the opening titles, to the next part of the episode, and essentially, it's been 4 hours, since Kirk and Sulu have disappeared. They're orbiting this mysterious planet that's appeared out of nowhere, and I have to agree with what Spock does here. You've got these two crew members, McCoy and the navigator, who are saying, "Look, we want to beam down and carry out a search," but Spock correctly asked the geologist, what's the atmosphere like down there for one, and put simply, lethal. Anyone who beams down, who's on the surface of that planet, would not last very long. But the second point, they've been scanning the planet for these 4 hours, unable to to locate any kind of habitable area, and I'm guessing that it's not exactly a small planet. Let's take it even if it's the size of Earth's moon. Searching that area for two individuals would take quite some time if you were to do it by visual search, which is essentially what those two crewmen are asking on doing. Silly? Yeah. But anyway, we'll just have to see how this, how that plays out. At the moment, it's a case of, no one's going anywhere, and you just need to keep, scanning and seeing if you can find some form of life on that planet. So, one comment I want to make, I'll just kind of back up to a little bit, is to the pre-credits opening, is also in relation to Spock's comment that he finds it irrational or illogical to romanticize those desert-like conditions when his home planet of Vulcan is very much like that, and one would think that he would have those kinds of feelings, although buried under the surface, the way Vulcans do, about his home. Anyway, getting back on point to where we are with the episode, Spock has just received an initial communication, from the surface, which does appear playful. Greetings and felicitations. Hip hip hurrah. Tally ho. And has decided to allow an away team to beam down with appropriate life support systems and weapon, appropriately armed for and geared for an away team. He and Scotty are staying on board. So it's the navigator, DeSalle, the geologist, and McCoy, who initially would be beaming down for this away team. I do find it a little questionable in relation to this away team happening, not just because of the oxygen issues, but also because of the heat. I mean, granted, the oxygen side can be dealt with easily enough. I mean, there are certainly life support options, spacesuits, or something that could happen there, but it's a little hard to protect from extreme heat, and it depends. Granted, it does depend on how hot the geologist was meaning, as to whether or not any life support gear or spacesuit or something could protect them from the requisite amount of heat that would be happening down there. But let's see who is sending these greetings and felicitations and how the away team survives those conditions. So they beam down, and it turns out to be kind of an oasis of sorts. The geologist determines the atmosphere to be breathable, and there are trees, and it's a kind of a greenish sky. No, their technology isn't working, so they're unable to communicate with the ship. Although Spock did give DeSalle, the navigator, a light beacon as a alternate way to communicate. But due to it being the atmosphere the way that it is, and he was trying to find some open ground, and in wandering around, he found what I'm guessing, at least from the way that it's shown, a big door to maybe a castle or mansion type building, which after a fashion, I suppose, does meet up with the tally-ho kind of comment, kind of greeting that that was sent. But yeah, let's see what's happening inside this building. So I've gone inside, and you get a basic look at the room. It is featuring lots of ancient Earth art, a harpsichord, suit of armor, several things from various parts of Earth history. They start to move a little forward into the building, and right near the door is one of the salt creatures as a bust. Well, not a bust, because that's just a head, but full body, but just stuffed, like taxidermy. There's a word. Kind of done. Salt creature from the episode The Man Trap. Similar, same race. And they see Kirk and Sulu just standing there. McCoy scans them and gets no readings, as though they're mannequins. And I do wonder, kind of what the point is of this place. I mean, there are a few different, a few other episodes of other Star Trek series which I could refer to here, but which do have similar kind of themes in them to some of the things that have happened so far. But I do want to avoid jumping ahead. I'm happy to talk about past episodes and how they have related to the current one that I would be watching, but it's just I know that most people who will be listening to this podcast, and I do appreciate anyone who does listen to this, and I will give thanks to that. And I do realize that most people who would be listening to this would have watched most, if not all, the various Star Trek series that are out there, and I do intend to review them all. And I know I wouldn't be doing much of a spoiler thing, but I do just want to keep this in kind of a timeline order, or at least a episodic order, to be a bit more accurate. So Kirk and Sulu are standing there, green light hovering over them. I'm guessing it's some kind of a stasis field of some form, which is preventing them from being properly scanned and properly detected, I guess, by McCoy's instruments. But let's see how things continue to unfold here. All right, so we are introduced to the other character in this, and a character that I am looking forward to discussing in some detail with this particular episode, the character of Trelane. Retired, of course. He's dressed in period clothing. I would say 1800, or no, earlier than that, say 1200s. It's almost like kind of a Jane Austen kind of era, for lack of a better time frame, or better description. And he makes a few comments here that I do find interesting. First of all, being that he has been watching Earth for a while. I find it interesting that he comments that it's so good of you lads to just drop in, even though he didn't really give them much of a choice. Kind of halting the ship. When I saw you guys passing by, I just couldn't help but stop you to say hello, essentially. And yeah, I mean, it's not like he gave them much of a choice for what was kind of happening there. But in addition to that, he also makes a comment that, I've been watching Earth, although I didn't quite think you were capable of such travels as yet. And the geologist then makes a comment that look at our surroundings. It's kind of about 900 years ago, which pans out with the time frame I was mentioning. And it's what may have been seen if you're watching Earth through a viewing scope. So in other words, if you're looking at Earth from this location, and given how far away Earth is, light from Earth would take X time frame to reach here, and so you would only be seeing what had happened in the time that it had taken from light from Earth to reach this location, which would take, well, let's say 900 years, just to kind of keep with the thing. And so it's seeing, Trelane has been seeing things from 900 years in Earth's past, which does bring into question the whole theory that Trelane is a Q. Because the Q are a race of and I do say brings it into question. I mean, there are various books and stuff where he is mentioned, which I did raise at the beginning of this podcast. But the Q are a race of omnipotent beings and are fully aware of humanity's past, present, and future. It's not like they are a stagnant race that is stuck in the present, so to speak. But they are very easily capable of time travel with the click of a finger. And the fact that Trelane doesn't seem to have that same full-scoped capability. I mean, he's demonstrated, pardon me, he's demonstrated that he is, powerful because he's able to, kind of transport people at will. I would assume that he created this planet, quite possibly. He, did state that, where they are is a calm storm and is, like an oasis in the storm of his planet. I'm guessing he that all this is his kind of creation, but I don't know. I'm going to break my own rule here a little bit, because as far as we know, and the Q have always existed. There have been no Q children for time out of mind, which also brings into question what Trelane is. I mean, I accept that he is a powerful entity, but given the various evidences that we've seen so far, and I will continue to discuss throughout the episode, there are holes in that logic or in that assumption. But let's see how Kirk and crew continue to deal with Trelane. I do like the fact that he plays the harpsichord. I think that's pretty awesome. I love the harpsichord as an instrument, and I do think it should make a bit of a comeback. But yeah, anyway, let's keep going. So a few things happen in the conversation over the next, say, minute, maybe two. First of all, the basic introductions are made, but just before that, Trelane makes an apology for the period or time frame error, saying, and which makes him fallible. Again, not possible for a Q, at least as far as this kind of thing is concerned, anyway. And then, as the introduction and Trelane then from a military, he's coming at this from a military standpoint, military background. General Trelane, retired, call me Squire, but he's showing that he's coming from a military background, and the nature of the conversation he wants to have is, telling about about your battles, about your conquests, about your wars, and so on, victories and defeats and whatnot. And Kirk quite rightly says that, although, actually, no, I'm not quite sure I'd say quite rightly, because there are evidences to the contrary of what I'm about to say. But for the most part, I would agree that that the missions are generally peaceful, to seek out new life and new civilizations. They're designed to felicit trade and a sharing of ideas and ideals, as per the Federation Charter. As Kirk is doing the introductions to his various of his various crewmen. DeSalle. Trelane responds to saying, "Yeah, no, he's French, are you? Yeah, no, I really approve of your Napoleon." And speaks a little French. He introduces McCoy, Carl Yeager, or Chucky, whatever his name is. I think it's Carl Yeager, the meteorologist, and Sulu, the helmsman. And Trelane does, kind of play to the crowd a little bit with each of their ancestries. DeSalle, you can see, is itching for a fight. He starts to go for his phaser. Kirk stops him, lets him know looking to put it on stun, not kill. But personally, I think that what DeSalle is thinking is a mistake, and I'm quite sure about to find this out in the next few moments. Is that trying to attack someone with the level of power that Trelane has demonstrated so far? Not necessarily fatalistic. DeSalle, thankfully, is not wearing a red shirt, so might survive the encounter. But he's definitely asking for trouble, and I don't think that a being as powerful as Trelane and I would say lower Q-like, for lack of a better way to put it, would be susceptible to that kind of attack. But yeah, let's just see what happens next. So, he did survive the encounter. Basically, Trelane froze him for a minute, took the phaser from him, fired off at a couple of things that he had in his, I'll call it drawing room, for lack of a better word, and vaporized them. And then Kirk took the phaser back. And Trelane does make a very valid comment right after that, being that for something that you don't understand, your initial reaction is fear. And I got to admit, that is true. And it's interesting to see that kind of sentiment still exists even in an explorer such as Kirk is supposed to be. Because someone who is in command of what is the Federation's flagship, being the Enterprise, one would think that that instead of fear, that his initial kind of questioning and sentiments would be curiosity. I don't understand you, let me learn about you. Not, I don't understand you, what the hell are you doing? I do understand the concern that he had with Trelane playing around with the phaser, and it was almost childlike after a fashion. He'd fight it off and, yay! How marvelous! But then, but then Kirk does get into the curiosity side a bit, and saying, how did you create all this? And Trelane says that, I and others like us have, and he goes, others like him have created a system by which matter and energy are interchangeable. And basically, what he's describing is what we would later come to understand to be a holodeck, which I'm finding very interesting. Because if Trelane's level of power, it's I don't know, this episode is fraught with some contradictions, and ones that I'm having a little trouble reconciling. And feel free to email me or comment, and I will, as I have at the end of each of my podcasts, I'll provide appropriate contact details. But Trelane being this Q-like character with next generation level of technology, but in terms of him being able to manipulate matter and energy, but very pre-next generation level of observational skills or observational technology, in terms of he was looking at Earth based on not being able to go there and not being able to view it as it is now, but based on light traveling from Earth to his location, where he currently is, which doesn't pan. There are, as I said, there are contradictions here, and plot holes which never really do get sorted out. I grant you this is a 60s show, so I do make allowances for those kinds of plot holes, but they never really sort them out, even in, the novels and whatnot, where, at least as far as I've read, where Trelane is featured. But anyway, to continue with the, let's continue with the episode and see, what happens next. After finding that information out, Kirk then decides to try and leave. Trelane realizes that he's going to need to kind of demonstrate his power a bit more, which again I find interesting, because Kirk, after finding out what Trelane can do, decides to be a little, I suppose, bold, but bold in the wrong way. Because if you're in the presence of something like that, I do agree that there should be a modicum of caution, and you should try and, work with him, for lack of a better word, than try and oppose him outright, as Kirk was trying to do. And Trelane's like, well, maybe you need a demonstration of my authority, or another demonstration of my power, to which he takes Kirk outside of his safe haven, if you will, to what the planet is like naturally, which is not very pleasant at all. Kirk's coughing and spluttering and whatnot in the noxious gases before Trelane brings him back. And I think Kirk is getting a clearer idea as to what Trelane can do. He's still trying to figure out a way to get back to his ship, I'm sure. And we'll see how those plans kind of develop throughout the rest of the episode. But anyway, and Kirk comes back and scene. We come back from what would have been a commercial break to the good old captain's log and Enterprise orbiting the planet. And Spock says that we've completed 14 orbits of this planet, and by putting some extra power to add to the sensors, we've been able to find a safe haven where the landing party most likely is. We still can't communicate with them, but at least we've got an idea as to where they are. And we'll see what they do with that information. So, on the bridge, Spock and Scotty are talking, and Spock correctly says that, if there's going to be, the crew members, captain, are going to be anywhere, they'll be down in that area. And I want you to see if you can find any signs of life, and if you can, just beam them up. And Scotty's like, shooting in the dark? And it's like, well, it's either we do that or we do nothing. So, and Scotty, concedes, that is certainly a fair point. We get back down to the planet, and Trelane is commenting on various things of his collection. He initially talks about the flags that he's got. He's talking about more flags than he would actually have there, because there's only about 6 or 7, I think I counted, and kind of says that, I've got things going back to the Grecian Wars, to Hannibal, to this and that, and if there were all those flags, there would be a much greater collection. But then he goes back to playing his harpsichord, and so we've got McCoy, Kirk, and Sulu talking about him now, and the fact that he's not all knowledgeable. He makes mistakes. He's not registering as a conventional life form, doesn't show that he exists at all. And which I think makes him all the more dangerous, because if he makes mistakes, then, and he does have this almost childlike quality to him, his sense of whimsy and playfulness. Someone who's capable of making those kinds of mistakes and and short-tempered in the way that he punished Kirk for just trying to get back to his ship. I think it's a very dangerous position for the away team to be in. So let's see how they continue to handle that danger. So Kirk and Trelane continue to talk at this point. Trelane thinks they're making plans and deceptions and whatnot, and is applauding them for doing so. Again, this is Trelane coming from a military background, expecting best laid plans and whatnot. And then Kirk is saying, look, our crew, would be missing us. We've got, 400 men and women up there, and Trelane's like, women? You've got women on that ship? I'm going to summon them down. Kirk grabs them and stops them. No, don't do that. They're critical personnel. We need them to operate the ship, which is quite certainly true. And not too long after that, they find that Spock has managed to locate them and is going to be beaming them up. Trelane is none too happy about this. And given what the level of power that Trelane has been able to demonstrate so far, I don't think this is going to be quite so easily over. So let's see what happens after they do get back to the ship. So Kirk's intention is to run, which I can agree with that sentiment. Spock says, we didn't clearly locate anyone there. We just beamed up any and all life forms we found. And after getting to the bridge and saying that, we're going to need to get out here as soon as possible, they still sit around for about 30 seconds before properly giving the order to leave. And that's all the time it takes for Trelane to come up to the bridge. And he comments that he's only a little bit upset with Kirk for leaving, but pretty angry with Spock. He's a little surprised that there are no weapons displayed on the bridge. Again, that comes from the time differential not being properly allocated for. Because yes, they did used to do that a good, say, 900 years ago, and even in our present day, this is 2021 that this is being recorded in, and there are certainly places where weapons of war and pistols and muskets and whatever else are displayed for people to view, which in my mind is a sad comment on human state of affairs, but I'll leave that discussion for elsewhere. But Trelane says, "Are you not going to punish Spock for what he's done?" And Kirk's like, "No, I'm glad he got me the hell out of there." Me and the rest of us, the hell out of there. But I don't like him. I'm like, I don't care. And he's saying that that I've rearranged things on the planet for you. And everyone's going to kind of join me down there. Kirk's like, no, we're not going to. But again, Trelane, with the power that he has, essentially, click with a finger, down, back they are. And DeSalle still hasn't learned his lesson. I love it when you come across people that don't know how to properly control their emotions. Because the very first thing, first of all, when they get down there, the room has been rearranged a little bit. It still is dated, but there's now a dining table that several of the bridge crew are sitting at, and DeSalle is initially starting to get up from the table, ostensibly with the intention, my safe bet to say, of attacking Trelane, which, as I said, he still hasn't learned his lesson with. Let's see what Trelane does to punish him. So Trelane orders them to sit at the table, but and the male officers do, there's 2 female officers who have come down with them, one being Uhura, and there are several compliments made there. To quote a line from the Big Bang Theory, though, a separate TV series, which I do find this line to be somewhat amusing, is that even in the 24th century, they've got a black woman answering the space phone. But yeah, anyway, and Trelane, then you've got Lieutenant Teresa Ross, who also happened to be on the bridge at the time, down there as well. And then Trelane and Spock have a bit of a interaction, and I do have to agree with a line that Spock says. I object to intellect without discipline. I object to power without purpose. And that goes back to the whole absolute power corrupts absolutely kind of sentiment. I think it's sent here because in so much of our history, power is achieved for its own ends. I want power. I want this. I want to be able to do this with it to better me, rather than the sentiment of I have power, I can use it to help others. Don't get me wrong, there are certainly a lot of people throughout history who are on the other side, who are on the right side of that fence. I mean, I'll take Mahatma Gandhi, take Mother Teresa, take several religious leaders and whatnot that are out there who have managed to achieve their own levels, and I'll bring them into it. Say the leader of, or the current leader of my own religion, who that I am a part of, who is a heart surgeon, or was a heart surgeon before he retired, which I find kind of fitting, given that what's happened recently as far as COVID-19 is concerned, that we've got a religious leader who is also a doctor, a medical scientist, who in his lifetime came up with several medical breakthroughs, which has since become common use globally speaking. And here you've got this again, someone who he's got the body of a man but the mind of a child. He's playing with them, and he's not liking that this game is not going the way that that he wants it to. And for someone with the level of power that he has, that's a very dangerous combination. I mean, that there is a sentiment, and I will, a sentiment that does come up a lot, is that you do have people out there who have got this power for their own ends. I'm made $100 million with the movie, so I need a $5 million mansion with 10 pools and 5 spas and a sweat room or whatever, and we put all these people on pedestals. Don't get me wrong, I know that they do a fair amount of work to earn their paycheck at the end of the day, but I really do have a problem with the economics of with our real world, and I'm talking reality and non-Star Trek kind of economics, which I could talk about, but again, I want to kind of keep this this podcast kind of episode based. I'm going to abandon that line. The main point that I want to bring up here, though, is that Trelane is one of many examples that will be shown throughout the series of people who have got power, and I do mean this globally speaking, from a Star Trek perspective, or universal speaking from a Star Trek perspective, there are a lot of people out there who gain power, or who have got this level of power, but who abuse it and who use it for their for their own ends rather than for the positive purposes. And let's continue to see what what Trelane does with his corruptive power. I have to agree with the next few observations that that take place. There was a comment earlier, I think it was a geologist who made it, that the fire had no heat. And then you've got McCoy you're making a comment at this point saying, food has got no flavor, brandy it's got no taste to it, and to which Spock notes that these are that I am finding this interesting, not unexpected, and I would have to agree with Spock's comments here, because when you view something, when you look at something without properly taking part in it, you don't know what the full effects of a thing is. For example, if you stood away or looked at a picture of a fire without actually touching the fire or being near an actual fire, you wouldn't know that it gives off heat. And so you wouldn't know that you would need to do that. If you never actually ate food, you would not know what flavor to give it. If you did not drink a drink, same problem. You wouldn't know the textures, or the sensations or the flavors that would go along with eating and drinking. You would only purely just see. It's like the fruit bowl. You can look at the fruit bowl, but you don't know what an orange tastes like until you actually eat an orange. And so they are correctly surmising that that there are weaknesses to Trelane's power. They haven't surmised what those weaknesses are yet, but they have determined that there are weaknesses to that power. So let's see what the crew does to try and find those weaknesses and exploit them. So Trelane has had Aura, playing his harpsichord, and Lieutenant Ross dancing with him. He then, with a click of the finger, changes Lieutenant Ross from the Starfleet uniform she was wearing to a nice gown, to an evening gown, and continues to dance with her. And Spock and McCoy and Kirk are continuing to talk, and they're noting that Trelane never goes too far away from his mirror. Something which I would question a bit, because he did leave it for a short time when he met them on the ship's bridge, but again, we're only talking of a short period for that trip, so wouldn't necessarily have affected his power source too much. But they do make the comment that anything keeping out the atmosphere would be bigger than the size of the house that they're currently in, or the mansion they're currently in. But that and Kirk is making an observation that maybe I can turn the lights off at the source, something which I think would be a dangerous proposal in some respects, because that would cause the atmosphere to come rushing back in, but it would also give the ship maybe a few moments to beam them up before the atmosphere gets too toxic for for the away team, for the people that are down there. So it's possible that that whatever Kirk's plan is, that it may work in that kind of respect, but it'll be cutting a close call, and somehow the fact that there is a mechanism involved, and that it can somehow read Trelane's thoughts, means that whatever Kirk is thinking, he's got to somehow be able to catch Trelane by surprise. And whether or not he's going to be capable of doing that under these kinds of circumstances, let's find out. Okay, Granted, it's been a while since I've watched this episode, a very long while, but alright, so Kirk has now made a bit of a snide remark at Trelane, saying that he's unbalanced, and Trelane is starting to respond to that, and Kirk is essentially challenges him to a duel. And to which Trelane goes and gets a couple of match set, pistols. And I've got a theory what Kirk is planning. In terms of, instead of shooting out Trelane, he'll try and shoot out the mirror, which I'm assuming is Trelane's power source, or at least a connecting device to Trelane's power. The way that it's triggered or something. I do wonder if Trelane's going to pick up on that, though. So I was right. Trelane initially, is going to claim the first shot. Kirk tries to fight it a little bit, but then when Trelane says he'll kill one of the crew, Kirk acquiesces, and Trelane uses that shot to fire at the roof. Kirk then takes a shot at, initially takes aim at Trelane, but ends a little bit to the right to take out the mirror, which is quite correctly where the technology was that Trelane was using to manipulate things a bit. Because after that, things start to shut down, communications clear and whatnot, and Trelane is understandably really racked off. But given the fact that a power source, I won't say his only one, because given everything that he's had to create, it can't be as simple as a device behind a mirror. There's got to be more to it than that. While that's been taken out, whether or not the crew are able to, properly get away, and what happens from here, let's see. So Trelane disappears, I would assume, into his mirror somehow. After that, they do manage to get back to the ship, and they start running. Uhura initially asked, should I report this? And it's like, not yet, not till we're out of range. We don't want to let these people know where we come from. I mean, the less interaction we have them, the better. The lieutenant has come onto the bridge in her gown, but she's given permission to return to her quarters to get back into uniform. I do wonder what Trelane's going to do, though, because it can't be over yet. There's still another, say, 10-15 minutes of the episode, so, let's see what Trelane does. So in trying to run, they find that it's futile. Now, every time they try and run away, the planet Gothos somehow ends up in front of them. They manage to avoid it, a couple of times before it ends up sticking there. I do agree that Trelane does have to have access to it, to a large power source, particularly to be able to manipulate a planet the way that that he's is manipulating the planet Gothos, that he has, safe assumption, created somehow. And after realizing that escape is futile, Kirk decides to beam down. I'm guessing he's going to go down alone to try and face Trelane one-on-one, and to try and somehow stop him from abusing his crew. So let's see how successful that attempt is. Alright, so the next thing we know, Kirk is in a period courtroom. Trelane is wearing one of those English court kind of wig things behind the bench. Accuses Kirk of treason. And Kirk just continues to provoke him, saying, look, blame, although, don't say, just blame me, everyone else is just following my orders. With kind of the whole mindset that the captain is responsible for the conduct of the crew under his command. A sentiment which I have got some mixed feelings about, because everyone is entitled to their own free will, and while I agree that a captain should make sure that his crew are doing the right thing, there is still an element that that the crew is responsible for their own actions. Anyway, that's just by the by. Trelane ends up finding Kirk guilty of these charges, and sentencing Kirk to hang. But I think Kirk has got other ideas, so let's see how those other ideas present themselves. So a deal has been struck. Instead of a simple hanging, Kirk has managed to, goad Trelane into a battle of wits of sorts, or a royal hunt. He initially ups it little by little, saying, you could just, kill me here, but where's the fun in that? Where's the sport? Initially it'll just be my life that'll be on the line, but let's just up the stakes a little bit. And for me, if you want me to truly participate, then you'll need to let my ship go. Trelane agrees to this and sets Kirk loose outside the castle into Trelane's forest, with the idea that Kirk will hide out there while Trelane has to hunt and try and find him. Now let's see if Kirk is able to survive this hunt. So the hunt is on. Kirk makes several attempts to contact the ship, and at which point Trelane finds him and there's some running and fighting and things that happen in these scenes. It gets to a point where Kirk makes his way back to the castle, back to the front door. He tries to contact the ship again, unsuccessfully, and Trelane puts gates on either side of him so that the Kirk can't run away. And then there's a final bit of repartee between them where Kirk says that you may have won, but you may have beaten me, but you haven't defeated me. There's a difference between winning and victory, and I have to agree. I haven't been defeated. You may have beaten me, but I haven't been defeated, and I have to agree with that kind of a sentiment, because where there's hope, and where hope still survives, a person cannot be defeated. It's only after they've given up all hope of anything that that true victory or true defeat occurs. Kirk breaks Trelane's sword, and Trelane is he's disappointed with how this is ending. And then we see Kirk's Trelane's parents turning up in the form of green balls of energy. And they apologize to Kirk for Trelane's actions and say, look, we're going to set all this right. You'll be free to go. A brief side note, that the voice of Trelane's father is played by James Doohan, Scotty. But overall, a pretty enjoyable episode. I do have to say. I mean, it does have a lot of very really good themes in it that we've been able to to discuss in this podcast, and I do hope that that's some of the lessons that get demonstrated in this that that people, at least some people, do pick up on to try and make sure that if they are in positions of power, that they don't treat it frivolously, but actually try to do something useful to society with it, more than just being a proverbial playboy. I know there's a lot of you out there who do that, and and we really do appreciate all the good work that you do. But for those that do acquire money for money's sake, I do hope that that you do work to do better. Anyway, this is me, Abe, and I want to thank you all, those who have listened, to this podcast.